And there, we're back in the shop with a bunch of new projects to work on. But one of the first ones, well, I'll go through the new stuff. One of the ones we want to finish up hopefully in the next day or so is the pavement gear for Miss Ashley. We're hoping we're going to be coming up on some flying weather soon. We want to get this ready to fly at Palisade Park. We have the clear on the gear. We did a little dissertation on how and why we want to make pavement gear. We should be able to finish them up in the next day or so. Now on the last tape, Les Demet gave me a real helpful hand in getting the ink on the wing. The next step on this is going to be to ink the flaps and then do all the airbrush shading, all the weathering and shading that we're going to do. That's going to be our secondary project. The first thing I want to do is go through the mail and see some of the new stuff that's just come in. First thing, we got a photo of Walt Brownell's. He's got the fuse in silver now, but this looks like a giant plane. I'm sure we're going to see this at the Nats, though. I know Walt's working on it regularly. It's in Brodak silver now. This looks like an exciting project. You know, so many exciting projects, and just to mention again, Joe Adamusco and Dave Downey are researching out that Hawk biplane as a future project. I am excited as can be about all of these projects. I'm just blown away by how many new things are being built by people. Nice, exciting new projects that I think years ago people would never have attempted. It's going to be a great flying year. Now, when Chris Cox was here, we had a visit with him. I made kind of a little a trade with him. I wanted to try one of these tanks. This is a tank, an exact design of Behringer, who's got some unique four-stroke technology we'd like to learn about. This looks pretty interesting here. What's nice about this is this would now connect to the carburetor. So that's a nice little upgrade for, well, for anybody using a Sato or a four-stroke with the carb in the back. Notice the shape of the tank. This should give a clean shut-off too. We're going to be testing this tank as soon as I see if it fits in Strago or not. Another thing, it'd be worth testing, well, as long as we're going to have a test plane for this tank, it'd be worth testing to see if this is an appropriate choice for a two-cycle. If it works well on a four-cycle, no reason it won't work well on a two-cycle. Now, our agreement is that I'm going to make him a carbon fiber tank in exchange for this, so he can try our technology. We can try the Behringer technology. I'm going to go over, it's not a fair test to see, obviously the carbon one is a lot lighter, but in this case, if we were to really get excited about having this design, we could have tooling made if we see that there's a lot of potential in this. And again, I'm not sure, the only way you know any of these things is by trying them. But this is something that they've been using in Europe. Mr. Behringer is obviously one of the world's best flyers, and he's a machinist and engineer, so we're hoping he can contribute something to our modeling enjoyment here and our knowledge of modeling. Interesting. Now, it doesn't take me long, and I'm already thinking. And I'm thinking, okay, now if this seems to work as a way of, the idea is that the carburetor on a four-strokes, you need to be able to butt this right up on the carburetor. Now what happens when you connect this tube winds up becoming a snake and going up into the carburetor fitting or the Venturi fitting. Well, and we have one of Mr. Behringer's Venturis here too. I was wondering, well, maybe this is worth trying on a tank. We can locate a vent in here. We can make a, I wouldn't say a test, but kind of a copy of how he's done it. See, you learn from everything. At least I do. I try to learn from everything. And of course we still have the bubble jet tank, the one with the bladder that has no air, so in essence it should have, could have, would have, and maybe will have, we don't know that for a fact yet, an ability to basically never have an air bubble in your fuel system. Again, we're going to be testing this stuff. The only way I know to find out if it's appropriate stuff or improves it is test it. And that's what we plan to do. Also, one of the carbon fiber props that Chris sent us. I don't know who manufactures this or who makes it. Maybe Chris makes it, I don't know. Nicely made. Very, if you do an eyeball pitch, you can see it's got a lot of pitch at the hub, very little at the tip. Kind of a helical pitch prop. But this is supposed to be a prop that has exceptional drive and works well on the Sato 56. Fortunately, we just happen to have a box with two Sato 56s in. So when we get some appropriate weather and most of all appropriate time, we've got a lot of stuff to test. Again, I think this is just going to be the best flying season of all time. If that wasn't enough, we have Dub's bubble jet tank already mounted. We already have this in place, and we have one of his big fuelers. And most of all, we have the directions on how to use it. And we're going to try to replicate the system that virtually everybody in Pylon uses. It's universally accepted as the way to go in Pylon. We're going to see if we can make that work on a stunt ship. Now we know the Medusa 10.6.3 blade works great on the Jet 35, but now we have even more choices because Elliott Scott has graciously sent us 3 more props. These are 11.6s in our jet test program. And if you've never seen one of these up close and personal, these are probably, the workmanship is absolutely beautiful. They're balanced when you get them, unlike some props that you have to spend half of your day balancing. And most of all, they're relatively inexpensive. One of the things I would suggest everybody try, one of the things I'd love to try, and I'm not sure we're ever going to get to this point in time and space, but I would love to get one of their 12-inch props, pitch it for a jet, get it running where we just have the right load and the right pull, and then send it back to Medusa and maybe have them make us a replica of our own prop. We're certainly going to check that possibility out real soon because these people really have some nice stuff. And I don't think it's readily accepted in the United States yet that they have such nice quality stuff, but this looks like it may become one of the prop choices for the B-25. So without further ado, we have to get down to the shop and get some work done. There's so many new things. My head is spinning. My head is spinning when I'm sleeping. It's hard to imagine how many exciting things are all happening and how many other people are working on interesting projects at exactly the same time. Well, the props that I got from Elliott, these are perfectly balanced. You don't need to even touch them with sandpaper or grinding compound. But this surface, the hub surface, I would highly recommend you take an engraving tool. Now I open up the back here. I have a special tool because the jet has a little lip that these are going to go on Jet 35s. Also, this smooth surface on a carbon prop, it tends to slip. So what I've done over the years is I just have this, it's about a $10 tool. It's an engraving tool. You can buy it anywhere. Made by Dremel. And I like to put like a sunburst on there. All you need to do is roughen up that surface. It only takes a minute, but now you have a grip. And you don't have to make yourself crazy worrying that the prop is going to come flying off. And I would recommend to anybody, any carbon prop, that you do that. And the back of the washer, especially on a Sato. The back of the washer that goes on here, for some reason Sato doesn't put a knurl. Cheap insurance, a good tip. Also have this giant jet. He called jet, Dub calls it a tanker, but it's a giant fuel syringe. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking there's another use for this that I never even, didn't consider. This would be okay if you just were going to fuel up your plane. You didn't like to have the pumps that we use, the ketchup bottle pumps. Another nice thing is, see how this is, it's measured in increments, 1 ounce increments. Now this is a nice thing, and you can get that right from Dub. It's a double O-ring, so you're not prone to get a leak. It works with a giant large Sullivan filter, and the biggest thing it comes with is directions. And when we go out to fly, we're going to take the directions and the fueler with us, because we really want to go step by step. I really would love to see that work. That's a problem for everybody that has a profile plane, and 99% of the people, maybe that even have fuselage planes, could benefit by not ever having air bubbles in the tank. And the pylon people obviously have that technology down pat, and Dub is perfectly willing to share it with us, so why shouldn't we try it? All right, back down the shop. One of the next steps is to get some, maybe 2 or 3 more coats of clear on these landing gear. We've been putting this off because of all the terrible weather we've had lately. I'd love to be able to do this on a bright sunny day, get the last coats of clear. It's the last ones that really count. But these will be when they're all done, these will be our pavement gear for Miss Ashley. And this, once I get that out of the way, I'm going to put the clear on that right now, and then I'll be ready to start working on the flaps for the B-25. You remember a while back, before the big hailstorm, John Pothier sent us this little computer printout, and what I want to do is just carefully pull up. This is just ordinary office paper and rubber cement. Looks like we have a pretty good mask here. Rubber cement almost never pulls up the paint because it's just a low tack type of adhesive. Gives you a lot of options too when you're doing this kind of, well, any kind of, oh yeah, that'll work. Now I'm going to outline this at any place that doesn't look just right. I'll outline it with a black pen, I guess. First we'll ink the plane and see how we like that. Of course, one of the tricks you can do with this kind of a thing, now you can make a 3-dimensional by making the ink bigger on one side than the other, if you want to get cute. I don't. I just want this to look military, just to have the look of a military, and I think we've got it. Because it's rubber cement, you've got to kind of, with your bare hands, you can just peel it right up, roll it off carefully, and then a quick wipe with M600 will just make sure we're clean so we can do the inking. Now we'll assemble all the flap little sections onto the wing, and I hope today we'll get the flap inked. We're ready to shoot some clear. The highlighting done. Now of course we have all our books. We're going to dig out the books to try to get this as realistic as possible, using as many of the factory lines as we can. But once you put this all together, it's just hard to describe seeing it in real life. It's quite a big model. Once it's all in one piece, I'm not sure. I guess it's one of the things we're going to find out when it sits out at the end of the lines. Anyway, let me look at what we can do to simulate the proper ink work for the flaps. The first thing I can see is the aileron splits inboard of this panel line, so I can lay out where that split normally would be, and then create a little template for that trim tab. I think that'll be, and of course start on the bottom and then work up to the top. I've got the break, which would be the break between the aileron and what would be the flap on a scale plane. And when I put them on both pieces and they just go inboard, it looks like we have the proportion right that would be aileron to flap. Again, we're working in a world of interpolation, and you just can't measure it and go out, and you're looking more for an illusion than anything else. The next thing is I want to make up a little, that the trim tab is quite large. Here I'm just looking for a proportion. I'm trying to lay out what I hope will be a proportion. It's really like a mind's eye thing. Now I need to know the length on the real one is about 40% of this. So that would be about 4 inches. %, that'll do it. And I think that proportion will be close to what we're looking for. That is a line that goes on the front. There's actually 2 lines, and then there's a line that continues out this way. Most of these lines is really, it's just a matter of interpolation, because we really can't make exact scale copies of these lines because we've in some way changed, enlarged the shape of the wing. But what we can do is get as close to what we have on the factory drawing as possible. And we have so many projects in the shop here, but by far the one I'm looking forward to the most is the first flight of the B-25. I think that'll be a day that'll live in infamy. I hope good infamy, not bad infamy. It's been a team project all the way. A lot of people have contributed their best efforts. And then we need this soft ruler here because we're going up around a curve. I think it's safe to say too that we've learned a lot along the way in doing this project. A lot of things that I know can be better on the next model. Let me let that dry. On the real ship, that trim tab line, maybe they have trim tabs on the flaps on these, carries right over to the end, so we're going to continue that line right down all the way. And I think what we've been able to accomplish here is that we really have a set of ink lines that's, it certainly gives the illusion of being scale without being scale, without being an inch for inch. I'd say it's more like a caricature than a photograph. Now the middle flap line just has a line edge to edge. Of course we're going to have a border on both sides and a line in the front that would define the same way we have it that defines the hinge line, because that isn't going to be scale no matter what we do. Real easy, and it's a method that I've used with really excellent results without a lot of work even, of just laying out 1/8 inch tape and the outlines that I want to accomplish. It just gives me reference lines. Now if I make this totally or as close to scale as I can, that line that goes on the outside will go right through. So I can just measure up and get an exact line. Same thing back here, I can get that almost exact. You really have to just eyeball this. That's why we have a soft ruler that we can put bends in. Ah, look at this. Look at this. When the camera's running, you're supposed to not make mistakes. You do make a mistake, and we've done this before. And just wipe it right off. Keep the big knuckles out of the way. Now obviously I have to get this line on the bottom, these two lines, and then I'll have one side done and I can kind of look at if I'm happy with it or do I want to add or take away. Now with one bottom flap kind of laid out, it's time for breakfast in our house. I'm going to go upstairs and have breakfast. Have another cup of coffee and think about how I want to do it. Do I want to add anything? Because once I do both sides I have to continue that line right around. And that of course has to be real accurate. And then I always like to get up before my wife gets up, have a cup of coffee, think about what I'm going to be doing, plan out my daily schedule. Because there's so many things to do. It just isn't, you know, like just go buff props all day or something. It just, the scheduling of it and the time management is a major part of what I have to get done if I want to be efficient about this. One of the things I wanted to try to simulate, because it just adds a little detail. I don't want to get into doing a million rivets out on a wing. I just think it's going to get too busy, but I could put the lightest pen line I have just to accent the ribbing that's in the flap. Now I'm not sure if that's fabric covered or not, but you can see obviously this is sheet metal. This may be, and I'll look in some of the photos and see kind of what that looks like, but that'll be one of the touches. And see, I'm glad I had a cup of coffee, and I go out, I have the coffee, look at the books, and I say, well, what looks wrong? What looks better? What looks different? That looks like something I could add without any problem at all. This thing on something like this, that I want to make sure I get an equal spacing, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Whenever you're trying to fill a box with equally spaced lines, the problem is you don't want to get to the end and have a half, you don't want to have these and out here have a half of a rib. And from looking at the way that looks, I don't want to have that. I want to have it that it's equally spaced, even if that's not exactly prototypical. So, point is to get a, let's see if we can get a measurement on what the dimension really is. It's exactly 10 inches. So we'll make them an inch apart and see how we like the 1 inch apart. Now normally we could use a triangle up against the trailing edge to get these 90 degrees. We can't do that now realistically because trailing edge is not 90 degrees. These are swept forward hinge lines. Now that'll space it out equally. Now the hardest part is going to be, well, we'll see how we, see it's easier to do it with a light pen. Let me get this working. And just get an idea of what this is going to look like. I'm not going all the way to either edge. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. Exactly, in fact, what the drawing shows. And I'm using the lightest pen. This is an 030. See, because I want to get the bottom. You know, the other day I had Les here, and he was 2 sets of eyes. It was making a lot of the decisions real easy. But I'm here alone today, so far anyway. And I'm eyeballing up 90 degrees because anyway, even a little detail like this, it's amazing now. earlier this morning I was thinking, oh, I'm done, I'll be doing clear today. Well, then I look around and I see more details that I want to put on this. But that's the fun of doing it. We're certainly in no rush. What's funny is I've worked on some pretty labor-intensive projects in my lifetime, renovating houses and working on this house in particular, but this one is certainly up there with the labor of loves of my life. Anyway, yeah, I kind of like, now see, now I get time to look at this before I do the top. I can look at it from a bunch of angles. I'll go do the other panel. I can kind of look at it and see if I'm happy, if that's adding the dimension that I'd like to have. And once that's shaded in, I think that'll, see, the lines don't connect. That's what kind of gives it the illusion that it's just the high points of a fabric covered surface. Again, I'm trying to walk this fine line between it's too busy and not realistic, or it's okay. Now the other one looks real nice too. I'm kind of happy the way that worked out. Again, I won't really know until I get all the shading done on it. Alright, I think we're ready to flip it over, and the first thing, once it's flipped over, I have to run these lines around the whole perimeter to make sure I'm not doing the top. Any line that goes to an edge has to be done so that both sides are relatively equal anyway. The first thing I need to do is accurately get where this line rolls around the flap, so to speak. This is not a really great template either. Not even sure that's going to work. I don't think so. So what I'll do is I'll just do half at a time. Since it'll end in a hinge line, probably won't even really see it. And this is a thicker line because it's a separation line. It's thicker than all the lines around it. What I need is 2 dots to connect. Now with those 2 dots, now I can connect the dots. This is actually an extra thick line. So I'm going to move the template back just a little bit and double it up. That's going to be a high definition line. In here I'm trying to, with a very fine pen, this is an 030, get all the bottom lines totally even. A lot of them are off just the thickness of an 030 pen line. And needless to say, also we'll do any of the edges I possibly can get an alignment on. Adds a nice crisp edge when you can do this. Because these are supposed to look like military lettering font. We're coming up on the very end of the inking, because the more I look at this, the more I'm concerned with it getting too busy. I want it to stay, you know, as realistic as I possibly can make it. And I think to a big degree we've achieved what we started out to do. Maybe I could use the small ruler here. And I hope you've picked up some information that will add to your enjoyment of modeling about inking, because it's certainly one of the techniques that you can use to separate your plane from the crowd. Add a little detail, no matter what, even if it's a profile, even if it's the simplest basic model, you can use it for practice. And as I close in on this, I'm hoping we're going to get some weather either today or tomorrow, so I can shoot the first coat of clear. I need to do the shading, probably do the shading this afternoon. And we'll be ready. It's been a long journey. We'll be ready for some, put some clear on this. Now I get one last look at the ink lining before I start the shading. Again, I've been really careful not to get it to look too busy and too unrealistic. I think almost every line that's on here appears in some way on our documentation, so it does look, from far away, it looks exceptionally realistic. And I know the Brodak silver, this new B25 silver, is going to pop as soon as the clear gets on it. Now what I use for the shading is a mix of black with a little bit of the B25 silver mixed in. Just enough so it has a sparkle when it hits the sun, rather than a dull flat look. And some people might not think that's super realistic, but I like the effect. I think the effect is really nice. Again, that's all in the eye of the beholder. Now, before I do the shading, I just wanted to look at this in one piece and see if any of the places that I wanted to add a couple of ink lines to. Look at it from several different angles and areas. See if we really do have the look of a B25. Because it really is an illusion. It really isn't scale. And I don't know how much we can cheat before we get caught. But I think when it's all put together and we have all the clear on it and it's all buffed out like a mirror, I gotta look at it from a lot of different angles. Gotta look at it from this angle. Not sure. Not sure. I think it's gonna look like a B25 though. A wild prediction. Alright, I'm ready to start the shading and get some clear on. Looks like we have a pseudo day. The wind is blowing 100 miles an hour, but at least the humidity is not out of control. Always good to practice anything, truly anything, on the bottom. In this case, all of our shading of the panel lines is going to be very light. We're trying for a very light just the slightest hint. And if in doubt, lighter is better than darker. And even though that looks muted, once the clear hits that, it's going to change dramatically. Now all the dark edges go to the back of the ink line or to the outside of the plane. So when we do this one, and we'll just give that a second to dry, And it gives an ever so subtle 3D look to it. Start on the paper, very lightly just let it run out onto the part and bring it back to the paper. Now it's real easy to overdo this. This is one of those things that if you get carried away, like a lot of other things in life. If in doubt, I think there's a simple rule to follow. A little bit less is better than a little bit too much. And you can be pretty creative about this, especially with the silver. The silver shows up, you know, if you were doing a darker color like a red, well, it wouldn't really show up as much. What I'm looking for is that it's just the darkest, and then it just in the center and it fades. It's dark at the fuselage and works its way out. By the way, what will happen eventually, you get paint buildup on one edge, so you just rotate it and use the other side of the sandpaper or cardboard or paper, material of choice. Again, this is a detail touch that the nice thing is adds almost no weight at all. It'd be probably difficult to even measure how much extra weight you're putting on. Very subtle, very soft. Now in this case, I want the trim tab to be highlighted. And by the way, if you're not happy with any of this, you can always go back over it and darken it, but it's really hard to make it lighter at some point in time. And that's why I would really suggest, if you're in doubt, make everything very muted and subtle, because it's, again, like a lot of decorating things, it's easy to get carried away. But it really does add a nice, every time I do this when I did the Typhoon, get excited about the 3D look. And a lot of people think this is real difficult to do. It isn't. It's harder to control yourself and not overdo it than it is to do it. Can also create a little bit of a 3D effect. What I've done is make a template up here. I'm trying to look at where I would want the 90 degrees to be. And here's one here where we have a shaded area. And when two of them, the 2 points interconnect like a checkerboard, it gives a real nice three-dimensional look. And you can do that over and over again. You can be as creative as really as you can be. And on a big area like the wing, we can just start at one end, get a feel for how much highlighting we want. But I think it's most effective when all the highlighting is on one side of the line. Now we also are looking at all the highlighting should be behind. So the first thing I can do is get the corner in here. This is where it would be handy to have a helper. Somebody to just physically hold things. You can get all the little corners. You can see it doesn't take much, and all of a sudden it's coming to life. We can keep our general. I'm going to have to block this up some. Now it always pays to, once you do a little section like this, just stand back, look at it from a lot of different angles and make sure it's exactly what you want. In this case I want to get the bottom corner. The corner that has the shading always will have the corner darkened. That really adds a little three-dimensional look too. Again, I think the more mute it is, the more it tends to look realistic and not like an afterthought. And again, I'm trying to be careful not to overdo it. It's very, very muted. And you don't want to go the whole line. You want it to kind of fade. The right word is fade. Not be a solid, like an airbrushing stripe. Little spots where it's darker, little spots where it's lighter. And on the Brodak B25 Silver, this really adds, I think, something just really special to it. Without a lot of extra work, and with no weight at all. And so these are good things. Now it's the corners, so we want to have the corner cuts. Let's see, how do we want to do that? We want that side to be, I got to think this through. We want that side to be I think once you do this, you find out it's not that difficult to do. Relatively easy, in fact. And if you don't overdo it, I think you really does add a little dimension of of something that wouldn't be there if we just painted silver and walked away. Now the trick is when you do a section like that, stand back, walk away, look at it from a lot of different angles. And no matter how many angles I look at this from, I really have to, before I go out onto the outer wing, I want to make sure I'm really happy with this. And what I'm going to try to do is come up with a little bit of a stain around the whole perimeter here, and a stain around the turbocharger intake. See, I look around and I try to figure out what is it about this that I either like or what don't I like, so I don't keep repeating if there's something about it I don't like. I really like where the dihedral brake is. When we inked this up, that was one of Les's favorite. He really thought that looked pretty good. Again, all this is in the eye of the beholder. Some people think this is not really, and they would rather see the wing look like this. Well, you see, now you're in a position you can see. I think the three-dimensional look is really something nice. Anyway, we're going to continue on doing this. Not so sure we're going to be able to spray clear today, but it would be nice if we could get a coat on. But this is something that's just going to be time consuming. In every way it can be time consuming. It's just going to, couple hours here, couple hours there. But in the end, if it looks like what we have envisioned, and again, it's that vision. You see, what I wanted to try to show is a wing that was unshaded, a wing that was shaded, back to back. So you can kind of decide if you like it, or just come out with how much of this you really do want to include on a plane. I wanted it to try to look like this was stains that were coming out of the cowling. Again, we're going to ultimately paint everything inside the cowling black. There's a paint in here right now too. Compare it detailed. You can basically decide just how much of that you want to carry through with. Now we have a reference because we want to try to put pretty much the same amount of detailing on one side as on the other side, so it'll look kind of symmetrical. I wouldn't want the shading to be a whole lot darker on one side than the other. And I can kind of look back and forth and see how much I've got. What I really do enjoy though is when you shoot the clear on this for the first time and that color pops. Like a lot of the Brodak candy colors, they look very soft until you actually hit them with clear. Now we're going out this way. See, I'm working left-handed now. I don't see any reason anybody that really wanted to do this kind of... This would look really effective on a white plane, by the way. I was just thinking of that. Like an old Stingray kind of plane. An Olympic. Actually, it looks good on a B25 silver though. I really like this. But again, I might be a little prejudiced, just a little bit. Now I need to put in the corners. And again, I'm looking left to right. The corners really do look effective. Now I have to make a couple of short templates to get in here. So I'll use this one up because it's got so much paint on it that I can just basically throw it away now, or probably could use it for sandpaper if you really were, you know, in real economy mode. Now to critique the whole wing in one piece to make sure it's balanced. Back of the nacelles, they have that same look. Turbochargers have the same look. And basically the only thing left to do here is flip this over, do the bottom exactly the same. And if we have time, get some clear sprayed, or else hope that tomorrow is going to be a better day for shooting the first coat of clear on this and seeing how all these ink lines are going to hopefully, I call it pop, but it's probably a better word. It's time to flip it. We'll do the whole bottom off camera because it's going to be exactly the same. I hope we can get some clear on this today. Now, yesterday I put the first coat of clear on everything. Today we'll try to get the second coat on. Looks like we're going to have a decent enough day for spray painting, so we're going to try to space it out. Maybe get a coat on early in the morning, a coat on late in the afternoon. We just have to play it by ear with the weather. The only problem here, it's a little chilly this morning, but as long as the humidity isn't high, we should be able to get on a really nice coat of, get that dope to lay down in the cool weather. It's starting to look real good for 2 coats of clear. I always like to start with some small parts and then work my way up to the last thing, of course the wing. In this cool weather, and it's cool today, it's 40 degrees. This is gonna, as long as there's no humidity, the cool weather is not a problem. So far it looks like we really have lucked out with the weather here. Let those first little parts dry up. No hint of fogging whatsoever. In cold weather like this, if you can get a cold day with no humidity, that dope just lays right down. I wanted to show the sparkle, the gloss of this B25 silver, new Brodak color. That is just spectacular. Keep in mind that's not buffed out either, that's just 2 coats of Brodak clear on top of the B25 silver. And where those highlights are, when that sun hits the highlights, has that little hint of sparkle in it. You know, what I want to have here is a wet coat. I want it to look wet when I'm done. And there's a fine point at which it's wet, and then a little bit more and you get a wrinkle. I think we're going to be able to take advantage of today and get the clear on this, well, most of it, right up to the last coat before we have to sand it out. Well, that's the second coat of clear on. That's going to dry. In the meantime, we have other projects to work on what looks like it's going to be a really nice day. Now, we put the last coat of clear on this yesterday, so it's dried, and that's what it looks like. That's what Brodak dope looks like when it dries, when it's put on using the little method that's standard. There's nothing special about it. But now the next thing I want to do, I want to put the wheels on. I want to clean this up just a little bit. I want to put the wheels on, get the tape off it, and then I want to double check that nothing has changed. I want to go over there to Miss Ashley because we may be coming up on some flying time here. You never can tell. Around here, you never can tell if it's hailstorms, snowstorms, stun heaven. It could all change in a minute. Now, if you look close, because this dope is only 1 day old, now it's always better. You've got a lot of the roughness on it. It's always best if you can wait a couple of days. The longer you wait, the better it'll be, of course. In this case, what I like to do is, because I want to get the plane ready, I'm very, I wouldn't call it rushing it, but I want to get this done while our other dope is drying, which is always one of my goals, is to have something drying. So step one is to take some 1200 sandpaper, and this will be a little, now that a little get ready kind of routine. What's going to happen is we're almost ready to do the sanding and buffing on the fuselage next couple of days, but I would like to get the dope on the wing and the flaps and things drying while I'm buffing this. In this little part, I can put this on, and then we can really go out and test the gear. One of the things I wanted to do, I want that in the bank. So when I get to the Nats, I can just put these gear on and hopefully not have a lot else to worry about. The grass gear can stay on while we're flying at the club field, where it really is bumpy and you don't want to flip the plane over, because with the tar gear in place, on grass the plane would have a tendency to nose over and possibly, in a worst case scenario, break the rudder. So that's the first step, is to get it blocked out flat. Now you can see there aren't any, well, you got a couple little moon craters here. Basically that's what we're looking for, is a nice flat, totally flat surface. Now, the problem with doing dope that's really not totally cured, it's soft. So you have to kind of baby it. Of course, we're using Gorham silver polish. Now, if the paint were a little bit older, it would come up a lot quicker. In this case, it really does take a little bit extra. But remember, what we're doing is a hard shell quick finish. We just want to see how quickly, and you probably could do this all in 1 day, from the CA to the clear to the buffing, if you had a whole day and it was warm, like in sunny California or something. In this case, we haven't been in that much of a rush, but we would like to get this on a plane. And this is one more part of, you know, just getting everything in order before the real flying season starts. Now, at some point in time, you'll see it just starts to come up, it starts to shine, and because it's soft, that's the point at which you want to kind of quit while you're ahead. and it has that nice lacquer glow now. We don't want to wax it. Don't want to put anything on there that's going to, in essence, seal this. We want to let it air to the atmosphere as long as possible before we wax it. Now, Rich Jacobone and Noel Drindak have both told me about these wheels. Rich actually bought me a couple of pairs. These are much lighter than Dave Brown wheels. The only trouble is when I called up, I didn't call up, I had Rich call up to try to get me some 3-inch ones. They don't exist. So anyway, we do have some 2-inch ones, which is going to be one of the choices we'll have for these. I'm trying to see how much they weigh. They're less than 4 grams each. So 4 grams would... That's the lightest 2-inch wheel I know of. Now, but there's something else significant about these. And I think they come from a place in Tennessee. But you could call Rich Jacobone or Noel Drindak and find out. What happens with Dave Brown wheels is you leave, and you can see what happened on my Typhoon. What happened is over the winter they get flat. Well, these, Noel and Rich both said they don't go flat. Well, we're going to find out. The other thing is we got to find out what the wear ratio is for these. And that's another problem. And when they wear out too quickly, that's not a great thing either. Now, there they go. We have to drill them out. They're too small. So the first thing is going to be to drill these out. What I have to do, because these are drilled differently, I need to drill one size a little bit larger, about a 130. And then I drilled this size. You can see how much slop is in there because I'm going to put an eyelet. And I still want, if you can see this, just a little bit of play. Now, if you don't have any play in the wheels, well, you're asking for some crazy takeoffs and landings. Just a little bit of slop in the wheels. When I solder that, that's actually a little bit too tight. We'll have to run that on a maybe one size bigger drill. Get some clearance in there. I just have to trim the wire off now, solder this, and we're ready to install these. And the last step, of course, is to mount them and then check that teeter-totter. For a one-day-old finish, that's not bad. Now, in this angle, you can see just how far forward the gear that we made for flying at the club field are. They're quite a ways forward. And it's difficult with the gear that far forward. It's really difficult to land without bouncing. It's not an easy thing to do. So what I'm going to do, well, you know, I'll take one gear off so you can compare where the grass gear location is relative to the pavement gear. Now you can see how far back the pavement gear, see the angle? How far back the pavement gear are relative to the location that I think we can line it up this way. It's quite a bit further back. Now all we have to do is, once we have the both of them on, make sure that we don't have any change from where we originally set them. Now with the two pavement gear on, first thing I want to make sure they're lined up right. And these look pretty good, that I didn't change it in the course of making the gear or sanding them or painting them. Now a ship typically will, at least the ones I've had, typically will turn a little bit tighter inside with the gear back. In other words, the bigger you make the wheel, the longer you make the gear, or the more forward you put it, you soften the inside turn. When you go in the opposite direction, you increase the inside turn. So this may even require a handle adjustment. Now the critical part of this is always, this is what I want to have when it's on its pavement gear. That it just drops ever so gradually. And it looks like I still have a reasonable amount of prop clearance anyway. We'll find out after we fly it. I'll put the grass gear as my spares now right in a car in a plastic bag, so that if I do decide to fly this at the circle burner field where it's grass, I can switch in a matter of a minute or so. And I need to get a couple extra pair of these wheels. Find out if Rich can get them, or if Noel Drindak and Rich Jacobone both have them. They have the address. I don't have the address. I store these in the van with a lot of other, of course, spare parts. It's a good idea to put each one in a sandwich bag and then put the both of them together in one big sandwich bag. That kind of gives them a little bit of protection. And that's one more piece of the puzzle out of the way. So when we actually get to the real, and see, to get all these things done before the flying season, it's a major help. Once you have a spinner polished, and I've shown that enough time on video, to keep it really at its final state of polish, 4-0 steel wool just seems to be probably the best single thing for polishing. Once it's been polished, it only takes about a minute. Bird, out of here. And get a look at just how quickly this brings, look at this bird. How quickly that brings it right back up from the dull to where it's really nice and shiny. Now, it may not seem important to get ahead on some of these little items like this, but believe me, I think it's one of the most important things I can do, is because we have such a limited amount of time that actually you can fly, that having a minute or two that you can fly, you have plenty of shop time. You have almost a bottomless pit of shop time. But once you get to the field, and like we had last week with Rich's header flying off every 2 or 3 flights, I mean, it just blew a whole day for 3 or 4 different people that all had to work on his plane. So I try to get my stuff as reliable as possible, and hey, that's a good little trick. That was from Noel Drindak, by the way, that little, the 4-0 steel wool thing for the spinners. But they have to obviously be polished first. Anyway, we have pictures. I have to download them yet. We have pictures of Paul Walker's new P-51 that have been out on the internet. I'm going to see if I can print some up this afternoon. Now, because we're trying to get ready for some flying sessions, one of the things I wanted to try, and I guess I should be, see, this is always a good idea too, is practice in your backyard, not at the flying field when everybody could be flying. I have Dubjet's tanker here. And I wanted to see, well, I guess we're going to find out. I read the directions carefully. I'm trying to go exactly by what he said, but I'm sure I'll need a couple of days of practicing and getting familiar with this. Now, the idea is to pull out a vacuum until there's absolutely no air bubbles, and a little bit of back pressure. I can see air bubbles coming out of that right now. Not sure if you can see this from the camera angle we have. But what this is doing is collapsing the bladder down. Again, the reason we didn't have success with this the first time, Dub's thought was that, well, it's right in the directions, that you really can't use a SIG fueler. Now, we don't have all the air bubbles out. I guess you really have to pull on this. Again, I'm going to need some practice. I see that air bubbles went in there, so that's not going to be a fair test. Oh, now I didn't have enough fuel in here, so let me go and do this backwards. I can see the bladder inside filling. Yeah, you can see I injected a lot of air in there, so, and that's I guess typical of the learning curve on anything. What I need to do is put more. Let's do this right. That should have emptied it. Again, I think it's just a lot easier to do this right now and figure out what I'm doing wrong, and the worst can happen, I'll send up this tape. Now I want to pull out the rest of, and here come the air bubbles, and I can see them going up through the bubbles. This is what should have happened the first time. I'm wondering if I should be holding the plane on its nose. Now see, I'm going to have to call Dub because there's still air bubbles in there. Now, let's just see if... This is why I wanted to do this in the comfort of my backyard rather than wait to get to the field. Now see, there's a couple air bubbles. Well, we're going to have to look at what we're doing wrong here. Heaven forbid I should have to read the directions. Now it's taken me about 15 times of going back and forth to the point where I have no... There goes the last of the air bubbles up there. Now to try to fill up, just saw another air bubble go in, and maybe I have to hold this straight up and down. See, I'm not sure in a pylon racer if they hold, the thing I don't know is if they hold the nose up like this. Does that help? Notice I have the directions. Anyway, we do want to learn about this. Okay, there is absolutely no air bubbles anywhere in there. Now here comes the last of a couple of air bubbles here. Now what I'm going to try to do is now push and fuel back. Up, there goes an air bubble. You know what it is? They're getting trapped in that Sullivan filter, I think. That's what's happening. Now, I'm going to try running this once and just see how many air bubbles there are. Now there should be, in theory, here it goes, there should be no air. Well, there should be so little air in that bladder right now. Okay, that's definitely full. Now, if I go by Dub's directions here, what I should be doing is putting a hemostat on this line. That still had some pressure in it. Anyway, learning new stuff is always exactly like this. It's a nuisance. That off. Obviously there's a little pressure that pushes the fuel in there. Oh, help, help. Now what I've done is, because I have the nose down, I think I'm siphoning the tank. What's happening? Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So rather than belabor that, until I get used to this, now it's just, I just flooded it out because I had the pressure off the hemostat. I didn't want any air to go back into the tank. So obviously we're going to just let this drain. Now, I have to tell you, that was amazing. Because we've had even a carbon fiber tank on this plane and other tanks. We've had the metal tank, the original one. And while you were adjusting the needle valve, you could see air bubbles going through there. There's no doubt about it. Right until the very end, and I mean the end, when it shuts off, there was not one single bubble in that fuel. Now, granted, it took me 3 days to figure this out, but a little longer than I anticipated. I always think I'm smarter than I am, but I guess I'm not. But anyway, now the test is to fly it at the field. And we're going to have to be waiting for weather for that, of course. And we have those 11-inch props to test. But if there's potential here, and I really think there is, that I'm just going to practice a couple more times filling it, draining it, filling it, draining it, because I really, when we do get to the field, and on a profile, it's real significant on a profile. Anytime you have a profile, just look around and see what's happening. See if you see bubbles going up into the fuel line. And I mean not one. I watched that for about 7 minutes while it was running. And not one bubble. So I have to think we've learned something, and learning something is always the primary objective. I also learned another thing. These props are so sharp, that little flipper that I had, it cut the end right off the flipper. So I've gone to the next size of heavier duty tubing. We may have to go to a chicken sink. Those are razor blades. Boy, they're like APC props. I hadn't really flooded the motor out until that time, so I never got it to really kick back. Anyway, we've learned, and I hope I can pass that. We're going to test this more. I'm very excited about it. And I may be able to get that in Strega. I don't know. If you're interested, you can always order up one of these tanks and the fueler right from Dubjet, right off the website. Now I want to take the oldest of the parts that have been drying the longest with the clear, using some 1200 sandpaper. Get them flat dull, and we're going to start buffing this part out. The oldest part, the part that's been drying the longest. And the longer you let it dry, the quicker and easier it'll sand and buff up. And if it stops raining out there, we can get a look at what the buffed out silver will look like out in the sunshine. And what we're looking for is that it'll be flat. It'll be dull and flat. This spot here should be done. You can see what that looks like. That's kind of dull, kind of flat. The flatter, it even feels different. You could feel a difference, and that's what makes a buffed out dope finish so nice, is the feel. When you pick up the model, you just can feel it. Next step, I want to get some Gorhams out, of course, and see what this is going to look like once it's buffed up. Now, depending on how fussy you are, and of course you can be infinitely fussy and get every little moon crater out, or you can just skip this altogether and go fly the plane. But we won't be skipping it. It's best to do a small area at once, probably the size of a playing card or something like that. Now, I've tried, and people have sent me over the years, I mean, many different, I'll call them Gorham replacements. Try this, try that, try that, but I always wind up going back to Gorhams as the choice. Now, just to give you an idea, I emailed Dub last night to find out if it would be possible if we could make a carbon fiber tank and he could somehow put a bladder in it. Reason for that is the round tank doesn't fit into most of the test planes, and I really would like to have it fit right where the tank is now. Here it comes. It's coming up quickly. And because it's a rainy day, I'm guessing we're going to just buff part after part, try to get as much of this buffed while the rest of the dope is drying. Now, I wanted to do this without further ado so I could get some idea of what quality of finish you have here. 1200 sandpaper, Gorham's. Anyway, Dub is going to be doing a pylon racer up with Brodak dope. It'll be interesting to see how that works out, or if we'll be able to repay the favor to him of he's been helping us with a lot of stuff motor-wise. Now what I'll do is I'll do the rest of this part, do one part at a time. I can actually sit and watch TV while I'm doing this, so, but that's what we're looking for, what we're trying to achieve on the whole plane. And the idea is always have the parts drying while you're working on it. If you painted the whole plane in one day, I'm not sure, you know, maybe a smaller plane, a less complex plane, but this way we always have something we're working on, always something that's out in the field. And believe me, this has no wax on it. You can see, I haven't cut the camera, you can see if we were to put wax on this, and we don't want to wax this until the day we're going to put fuel in the model. And the first of the parts is really buffed up beautifully. This is one of the things about Brodak dope that's different than all the other products, is how easy it buffs up, how quick it buffs up, and once it's buffed, just needs a light waxing or whatever before you put some fuel in the plane. That's going to shine even better once I get some. This is the new B25 silver. Now you can see how flat this is all sanded out. 1200 flat. I wanted to see what some of the other colors we're going to buff up like. We've already got the stab and elevators done, but we don't have anything of the blue done. And the candy apple blue is one of the brightest, absolutely brightest colors if you're going to do a painted on canopy or just as a color to use on a traditional stunner. Now I can take a little bit of final shine just to see what that's going to look like. Final shine doesn't have any wax, so it's perfect for this kind of a where you just want to see what the color is going to buff up like. And we'll just see how many hours of buffing we can put in today, because every hour that we're putting in, the paint on the wing and on the other parts that we put the clear on is sitting over there drying. Anyway, I also want to see what the red is going to look like when I get it buffed up. This stab and elevator is just buffed up beautifully. That was just... Again, tricks that you can use is if you have a way of letting the dope dry out a couple of extra days. You know, in the old days what would happen is you'd paint a whole plane at once. And it would be in one piece. And what would happen is on a day like today, you'd say, gee, I want to go flying. Let's hurry up, get it. Well, and then the other theory is you can always wait until you fly the plane to buff it out, but then you're buffing off about 1.5 ounces or 2 ounces of paint. And you can change the CG, and you know, most people when they take their new model out for the first time during the year, they want it to be pretty so everybody can look at it and go, wow, oh my God, you're the king of the universe, or something similar to that. Now that brings it halfway. And this is just time consuming. Luckily we have plenty of videotapes to watch, plenty of music to listen to. We got our good friend Chickadoola to keep us company, and But every time I do this, and I know everybody that, whenever somebody's in the shop and they see this, the paint buff up like this, they really do like. But that's something everybody, at least everybody I know, wants to have, is that beautiful buffed out, dope finish. It's hard not to appreciate that. Even when I was a kid and I'd see the champions at the time have the models that were all buffed out, oh boy, it used to make me so jealous. See how quickly and how nicely that's buffed up. Well, I love that color blue. That blue for the windows. Ooh. Mike Kajeski's painted on canopy was done with the same Brodak candy apple blue. Boy, does that look nice. I like that. Now the carbon fiber parts, of course, one of the things you don't have to deal with is worrying about wood seams popping or anything like that. You can just pretty much bear right down on it. And what I'm looking for is that the whole part, before I get the gorums on this, the whole part is, you can see on the cowls, takes just a little bit less work because of course there's no wood seams or anything swelling. Get an idea how that's going to look when that whole cowl is buffed out. I'm very surprised how quickly the cowls are buffing up, because I did think this might be a problem, but I did not anticipate it correctly. I thought because it was carbon, it might be some kind of problem that I didn't anticipate, because it's kind of different doing this. Dope buffs right up, and that's what I like. Boy, I've been thinking about that Dub Jet bubble tank, and that has the potential, if I can figure out a way, and if anybody out there has an idea, I'll be all ears. Kind of a shut-off valve that you could mount to the side of the plane like a needle valve, so that you could fill that tank before you went out to the circle, and then turn that little valve so it wouldn't siphon. Because even Dub has told me it's a problem that once you fill it, you have to put forceps on it. Well, yeah, I had trouble with it yesterday too, but I'm thinking somebody in the world of RC must make a little shut-off valve that you could just mount there. But thinking of potential motor runs you could have if you never had to deal with air bubbles, even if for one thing, if right at the end of the flight, like the most important thing on a 4-stroke, if you don't have an ounce of fuel in the tank at the end when you finish the patting the clover, the motor wants to quit. Well, half an ounce or whatever, maybe less than an ounce. But what that does, it goes right to the end and just shuts the motor off. You don't get 10 laps of that real lean where the motor's killing itself in dead lean mode. Just gets to the end and it's just like pinching a fuel line. So I'm trying to give some thought to that. I'm going to talk to Noel Drindak. He's one of the people that's aware of all these little gizmos and things they make in the world of RC. But a little shut-off valve would do it. Just a little. And you know, it isn't as big a deal as I'm thinking of one thing. You see, this is the thing. When you're buffing something out, I hope I'm getting this point across. You have hour after hour here. You can either watch Speed Vision or watch Windy videos or something, but it's to come up with ideas. Now, the idea is, when I buy supplies for my indoor fish, I always see these little turn valves. I just wonder if they would be fuel-proof. The real good way to find out, just go buy a few of them. So maybe in my jaunt tonight, when I take Karen shopping, I'll run over to the pet supply place See what kind of little shut-off valves they have. Because imagine now, once you fill a tank, you don't want air to bleed back in. You want to let fuel come out and then shut it. And right there is where you want it. Now, when you start the engine, open a valve, choke it. Kind of like that system Paul Walker had, where he had little. I have to ask Paul what kind of little shut-off valves he had. Maybe he made it himself, and it's not a big difficult thing to do. It's just that, see, it's time management. If I spend an hour in a workshop making shut-off valves, I'd rather be buffing paint, and this is the reason why. Because at the end of buffing paint, you always have something that you're happy with. Anyway, these are coming out better than I thought they would. And I'm thinking about that tank every minute. Well, this was a good session. We got a lot of the parts now. Just a little inventory of where we are. All of these little parts here, stabbing elevators. And the cowls are buffed out. Tomorrow when we come down to shop, we're going to work on this. I guess the fuselage is going to be a one-day operation. But what that'll do is it'll give me plenty of time for this wing to be drying up. And then it'll be ready for a sand out. This way we're making real good use of the time. Now in this session, my plan is, I want to try to get, of course this tentatively is ready for buffing out. This has been drying quite a while. So I've tried to leave a dedicated session that I could get all of the sanding done in one stroke of the pen, and all the buffing. That really is about enough for my arm. If I can get that done in one session. And I'm looking around just to see that I haven't missed any spots. I don't have any repairs anywhere. This is one of the parts that I'm just tickled pink with the way the windows and the front end of this came out, the anti-glare panel, the lettering. It looks representative of a B-25, and yet we have shrunk it down quite a bit relative to real scale. And we'll see when it's all put together, when it's all buffed out. I'm really looking forward to seeing this in one piece. No point even fooling around, because we know we're going to use 5, 6, 7 sheets of sandpaper, sanding that out. There's just no reason to think we're going to do this real quickly. And what I've tried to do for a part this big, I've tried to leave a dedicated day that I'm not, you know, a dedicated session is the right word. So I don't have a tendency to want to rush this through, because this for sure is one of the things. It's just going to be time consuming. There's no reasonable way to speed this up to make it go in a half an hour or something, and if you try that, you're really just going to disappoint yourself. And I want to pick the spot to start with that has the most lettering and things like that on it. And at 1200 sandpaper, I've tried 1500, I've tried 2000, I've tried 1000. 1200 seems, for my way of doing it, seems to be the best compromise. It leaves no scratches. Once you do the final shine polish out, there's for all purposes no scratches at all. And if there was a quicker way to do this, there isn't. I picked up one spot here, but typically a spot the size of a playing card until it's dead flat, and then move on to the next spot. The only reason I'm doing such a big spot, this is where all the lettering is on a plane. There's a lot of edges and angles there. Anytime I've tried to cheat the system a little and try to use, say, 600 for the final sand out, you always wind up with scratches. At least scratches that I can see. Not sure everybody would be able to see them. And once we get rid of all the moon craters, well, what we're going to do is do the whole sanding of the whole part before we start to buff it. I want that whole part to be just dead flat without moon craters. This came from Dave Downey while I was buffing this fuselage away. This will keep me inspired. Oh man, nice. Anyway, I'm really excited. Dave is supposed to be sending me some pictures of this P6 too, hard copies, because I can't get them off the format that I have. Right here, they come in a different format than I'm able to use from Dave, so he's been sending them this way. Let's get back to buffing. I like it. I'll take it. Another good tip, and this is one of my favorite ones, is when you're going to do a surface where it's a lot of curved edges and corners and angles, it's just as easy to just get a pair of old socks, put a little bit of Gorham's on each one of the socks. Now where on flat surfaces it's okay, but where you really get a nice, again, see up by the, all of these little areas, these split areas. And this has been a tip that's been on videos for years, but it's one that a lot of people, you know, once they do it, they say, wow, what a great idea. Anyway, we have these P6 pictures coming. I need a new computer, that's what I need. What I need is one of these fast internet access things so I can just go bing, bing, bing and be there. But actually, I am getting good use out of the old one. I shouldn't complain. Anyway, for curved surfaces or this kind of an area, what you can see is it doesn't take long. And when you're done, you can basically just wash the socks. First time I put them in a laundry, Karen says, "What's that? What'd you do? Step in pink pudding or something?" Well, honey, no, we stepped in Gorham's. Now, another exciting development that's just happened in the last couple of days is we've been in contact with Wild Bill Netzband, of course, who really is one of the most knowledgeable people about aerodynamics that I've ever known. And what Bill has basically emailed us and told us is that he's convinced that the nacelles are going to make lift. So if that's the case, boy, we're going to be in Fat City. But if not, well, you know what? We're going to find out. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point. You can see how quickly, because what happens is the socks, everywhere you're touching the plane, you're buffing it at the same time. So it doesn't take long, and it comes right to life. Now I'm just getting ready, putting a final shine on this, because I want to see what it's going to be like. This is the last thing I'm going to be able to do today. And tomorrow we'll get down and sand the rest of these parts out. If you can see in the video, but that really did a nice job of buffing up, as Brodak Dope always does. Now I got one other thing that came in the mail today I want to put on the video, just for general interest purposes. Now I always get these in the mail, and I'm not sure I'm not sure what the what one looks like or sounds like or whatever, but I saw one thing on here that was pretty interesting. These, and I know these are not real powerful engines, but one of the things that's interesting is they were, let me just see if I can find this now. I was looking at this when I had lunch. Here's a 60. Now keep in mind this is geared 2-to-1. It turns a 1612 APC, but it runs at half RPM. In other words, it's got a gear. Now you know what I wish these people would do? I mean, I'm always interested in anything relating to this. But what I would like to see is send me a free motor. Anyway, they do have, I'll just put their website on here. If anybody's interested in this, I'm sure you can look it up on a website. It is general interest information. But this 4-stroke it's geared 2-to-1 and the cylinder is in line with the crank. Looks like something that Banjo could probably buy 2 of these, but anyway, I'm always interested in new stuff. Anybody has one of these or runs it? Today I've kind of allocated the day to, since it's another one of our beautiful rainy stormy days, I've kind of allocated this day to trying something I haven't tried before. Normally what I would be doing here is I would be sanding this whole part out with either 600 or 1200 depending on just how fussy I was going to be. In this case I'm using 1200, and I would be wanting to put on one more wet coat of clear. And that, after I reweighed everything part by part by part, and I see I'm well within the finish weight that I anticipated, but what I'm not within is the weight that I did not allocate for the nacelles and for some of the other detail parts that have gotten to be heavier than I expected. So what I've decided to try to do, and no telling if this is going to work or if it's even going to be mediocre, because I can always see, the thing is, on a thing like this I can always change my mind. I'm going to try to sand this without putting that final coat of clear on and just see what kind of finish I can get, because every ounce I can save from this point on is going to be significant. Now if I happen to go through in a couple of spots, and I'm sure I will, what I'll then try to do is just touch up that one little area, and because Brodak Dope repairs and feather edges in so easily, what I'm hoping is I can save, you know, the better part of an ounce this way, because we're really getting to the point where I would like the model to be lighter than it is. I've also ordered, with Noel Drindak, we finally got the right address for these wheels. As soon as I find out they have them in stock, I'll put the address up on the board. But in the past, when I've called that Hobby Lobby or whatever it is, number one, they either don't answer the phone or they put you on hold for an hour. So I've been kind of hoping I could get through and see if they have these in stock, because they are significantly lighter than the wheels we have, and that's all we're looking for right now is light. Now I won't know until I actually get the full buffing on this out if this is going to pay, but again, up here you can see that I need to do a little more sanding. No sense putting a whole lot of it on camera, but if I can get away without putting the extra coat of clear on what will amount to be the wings and the flaps, it'll be the better part of an ounce that I can save this way. If it doesn't, obviously I'm going to have to wipe it all down with M600 and shoot on another coat of clear, but we'll give it an all-time try first. See, it didn't look so bad to begin with. If this was really rough, I would be worried, but it looks like I'm probably 80–90% sure I'm going to get away with cheating the system here a little bit on the clear. Now the only problem with doing this is I'm going to be really ultra careful as far, especially on edges and around corners, that I'm not going through. And normally what will happen, as soon as the paint starts to shine, I keep buffing them up. Well, as soon as it starts shining the way I'm happy with, I'm going to kind of quit while I'm ahead. Because at this point in time, even saving a half an ounce, a quarter of an ounce, some amount, even a small amount, will be well worth the effort. Now the trick is that when the paint starts to buff up, and it buffs up quick, what'll happen is when you know you have that extra coat on, or that, you just buff away. Well, here I'm being more than cautious, being super cautious, because I really don't want to have to repair anything. And if I can get away without the repair and having this buffing, in the next couple of days I'll have the buffing done, and I can start setting up the hardware in the plane. I actually start putting the plane together and getting it in one piece, and that of course is one of the major goals. But we've just gone through about a week and a half of terrible weather, and I've taken good advantage of it, which is, I guess, first the good news and then the bad news. Anyway, this is starting to buff up. Now even as I see it starting to buff up, let me get a clean towel. Like I said, let me rip 14 towels apart before I get one to come off. Now I'm not sure you can see it on the video, but the the Brodak Silver really is a nice color. I'm finishing up one part after another. We're into the flaps already. A little bit of final shine over the Gorham's polish. I have not found something that's better or less expensive, and when something's the cheapest and the best, well, it's kind of something you could recommend. Now we are really pushing this by not having this extra clear on here, and I'm just afraid we're going to start seeing ink lines disappear, but so far we haven't. So far maybe we're lucky. Anyway, that's what we've been looking for, and it looks like, at least for all practical purposes, we're going to be able to get away without the extra clear. Now we've kind of reached a little watershed in this project as far as the buffing goes, and usually the buffing is, and Joe Adamusco estimates it's about 40 hours. I estimate it's about 60. In a project like this, it might be twice that amount. I don't know. We've been buffing away, but we're not rushing it. See, that's the whole thing. When you get to this point, everybody's tempted to rush it. Let's get it all done in one day and run out and fly it. Well, yeah, we'd like to do that too, but we've taken advantage of the fact that the weather is we've just had an inordinate amount of bad weather, rainy weather, and we've used it to our advantage because we're not rushing. If we were in the middle of having some great weather, I don't know that it's like not eating pizza pie. I don't know that my willpower would have held up as well as it did, but we're looking at, and this is the final part of this that's going to have to be taken care of. We're going to start on it tomorrow. This whole thing, I'm guessing, is going to be able to be sanded out. I'm going to try to avoid getting that last coat of clear on this, and if I can, again, that'll be one of the dominoes will fall in our favor for a change. But that's a good I wouldn't want to start that in the middle of a day. I want to start it when I'm fresh, energetic, have a good cup of coffee. Probably 2 days, day on the bottom, day on the top might be realistic. You just can't rush through it at this point in time. It's just time consuming. But when you get it done, and when it's really nicely done, boy, you really have something you can be proud of. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Not a time window standard, but a quality standard. Anyway, this came from Noel Drindak, and I wanted to get this on before, but these are the wheels that are appropriate. And we ordered up a whole bunch of them. Here's the thing: is we have the gram weights right here. It's the 3-inch ones that they're 2 7/8. The ones I'm concerned with, they're 12.3. The ones we already have are about 20, so the saving would be about a half an ounce for the pair, assuming they look scale enough that we're going to be happy with them. Anyway, the phone number, and let's get this on here. See, they say their hours are 9 to 5. Don't bother calling at 9 o'clock. They're in a different time zone. Here's the phone number, 615-373-1444. Their email, sales@hobbylobby.com with an underscore in between. And as soon as we get these in stock, we'll do I ordered $45 worth of these wheels, so I already have them on Miss Ashley, and they seem to be, well, what I'm concerned with is I don't want to replace a pair of wheels every 2 days at the Nats. Anyway, this is one thing you might want to add to your little arsenal of things to try to lighten up the plane. Now, from Bruce Hunt in today's mail. And Bruce, thank you very much for the pictures. It's a whole slew of pictures of Paul Walker's new P-51 based on the Miss America paint job of the Miss America. Anyway, this has a lot of nice, unique features, and well, I hope we're going to see them either in Stunt News or he'll write us a little thing describing how he did the take apart stuff, since that's what seems to be a topic everybody's interested in. Bruce said he used the Tom Morris method. I'm not sure what that is, of using the plug-in wings. Anyway, this is such a nice set of pictures. There's some really nice detailed stuff here. I sent some of these down to Kent Tyser. Kent Tyser's trying to drum up some new paint job here. But it shows you there's going to be more than one Mustang coming up very soon at the Nats. Now this has plug-in wings. I gotta, I never got any information from Tom Morris, or I hope Tom Morris would publish it anyway. With the little, he's got some machine parts, like kind of a thing you can plug the wings in, which is nice. Looks like Paul's using an electric starter from the look of the spinner. We all know what that looks like. Has a Sato 56. Anyway, Bruce, we really appreciate these pictures. You can, it doesn't say on the back of any of them, like things like what the plane weighs. Looks like he's got a 3-blade, kind of a Bali prop thing. From the look of it, it looks like it's based pretty close to an Impact, which obviously is a good choice. Proven design, like an Impact with a Mustang fuselage. These look real nice. Now these I'm not going to send into Stunt News, I'm going to keep some of these for myself. Some of the people I know, like Danny, that really love Mustangs, really enjoy seeing these. Anyway, just a great set of pictures. Now unfortunately we're coming up on the end of the tape. And tomorrow here's the little thing for getting the wings plugged in. Like Doran had that type of technology. Anyway, we'll see how this is at the Nats. Looking forward to seeing it, needless to say. Anything Paul does is always interesting. Always competitive. Now the only thing we have left on this tape to do, and I'm not so sure I can do it, because I'm not in a mood to start buffing that wing today. What I'm really doing is I'm trying to come up with an excuse not to start buffing. But like everything in life, some days you just have to bite the bullet. Now on the next tape we're going to have to start buffing, whether we like it or not. Even Chickie's giving me a hard time about trying to postpone it. This is always the biggest part to do. And we've got a couple of days of buffing. I got to get my arm in shape. Maybe what I need is a trip to the whirlpool tonight or something, get my arm in shape. So I'd like to do this in a couple of days. We are closing in on having this ready to fly. We have the 11-inch props from Elliott Scott. We have all the parts. Everything except the wing is buffed. And by the way, this really worked out well. Just by being extremely careful about how much material I'm taking off, I'm getting away without having that last coat of clear on it, looks like. Be able to get out and test that Behringer tank. We also want to do some more testing with the tanks from Dub Jet. He's got another one coming my way. He's got another 60 coming my way. We got a lot of stuff to test. Whenever I look at this bench, I just think, am I going to live long enough to test all this stuff? Well, at least I lived long enough to get to this point on the B-25, so I guess I have something to be thankful for anyway. And we look forward to seeing you on the next tape. Get your buffing, get your Gorhams out, get your buffing arm ready. Sit in the sauna all night. We're going to finish that wing up, I hope, in the next couple of days. And then start putting this together. Of course, please share the tapes with all your friends, and hey, most of all, share the event with everybody. We are going to have some cool stuff coming up. This is going to be a summer to die for. I can just feel it coming.